Hey guys, it's Caleb here, and I wanted to take a second to tell you about our show sponsor, Yellow Force. Yellow Force is a Brazilian health and wellness movement that's based entirely on the benefits of turmeric, which is an ancient Indian root. Okay, this has been used in the world of medicine with its active ingredients curcumin, which has powerful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. What Yellow Force is able to help you with as somewhat of a dietary supplement coming in a capsule as well as a powder format is giving you energy, having those antioxidant properties to keep you feeling good through the day, giving you a boost of energy with their ginseng mix, as well as giving you a little bit more of a clear-headedness throughout the day so you're able to tackle all those tough tasks that you're going after. Like I said, comes in a capsule and a powder format, and Yellow Force is moving forward toward the future of health and wellness by going back to our roots, okay? Hence the root turmeric. See what they did there? They've got their Morninga curcumin mix, their turmeric mixed with booster. You can get into their renewal mix or their Suma plus curcumin mix. So check them out, Yellow Force, Feed Your Health. You can find them at yforce.com.br, or you can find them at facebook.com/yforcenutrition or on Instagram at yellow_force_.
Sweat Equity Podcast coming to you from Cigar City Studios in the Toco Works, Tocobaga Consulting Office. I'm your host, Law Smith. Sitting here with me is the Lion's Purr, Mr. Caleb Fuddy.
Woo!
That's what his voice sounds like. Our guest today on the podcast. Let him hear you. His name's Joe Sale of Tampa Image Factory.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Yeah, see, you got to get right up in that robot dick of a microphone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you hold it like a rapper, I say talk right. If this microphone was a penis, just go right for the dick hole.
Just the tip.
Yeah, but as center of the tip as you can, like the top of a pinwheel hat. You know where the pinwheel actually would, if it broke, where you would have to glue it back on.
Gotcha.
That's
Talking to
the
that.
urethra. You know how people have fetishes like real sex, where it's like a German guy who's got he loves to put twigs down his dick hole, right in there. Okay, we probably just lost anybody that's older than over the age of 50, unless they like dick jokes. This is Sweat Equity Podcast. This is the realistic small business startup advice podcast, the anti-Tim Ferriss podcast, if you will. Please do us a favor. Go on iTunes, subscribe, rate, review. That helps us out. We have a little bit of sponsorship, but we want more. The better the sponsors. The better the rating, the more subscribers. Not to say anything against our guests sitting here, but the better guests we can get. Who's the best photographer in the world right now?
Not me, but I'm working for it.
Okay. Well,
I know the best in our area is Joe Sale.
Well, I mean, we instantly liked your stuff. We kind of met when we were looking for office space, and we thought maybe we could divvy out part of your studio. And then I was like, you're like, hey, do you like really hot chicks in here? We're like, yeah.
No.
Yeah. No. My wife listens to this sometimes.
Of course we don't.
But tell us about yourself. Tell us about your company, because I'll try to butcher it if I give the Cliff's Notes.
No, by all means. My name's Joe Sale. I'm a professional photographer here in Tampa. I am the owner of Tampa Image Factory, which is a full-service photography studio in Tampa. And Hot Girls is a part of it, but we also do a lot of commercial photography. We do a lot of professional headshots and portraits, family portraits. Also a lot of product photography and photography for marketing purposes. That's kind of what my specialty is.
Yeah.
And also a lot of artwork. I like to do photography for art. And being a Tampa native, I'm very connected, and I feel a very immense kind of connection to the city of Tampa. So I like to kind of capture those landmarks and feature Tampa in a lot of my work.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Joe and I, the way I met Joe was we apparently look alike. We have a lot of parallels, kind of in our day to day.
You guys are just big white guys.
in our kind of day to day activities, and I guess we frequent the same kind of little rotation of coffee shops here in Tampa. And I walked into one of the coffee shops one day, and the barista, I guess I don't know if they're still called baristas, but we'll call this guy barista. He looked at me, he's like, "Hey Joe, what's up?" And I was like, I just rolled with it. I was like, "What's up, man?" And I don't care. Just give me my coffee. And And so then he gave me the coffee, whatever. We did the transaction. Then I went and sat down. He like said it again. And he's like, your name's Joe, right? And I was like, no, you said that earlier, but I just like played along with it. And he's like, oh, you look just like this guy that comes in here. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I came in another time, same thing. He was like, what's up, Joe? And like started laughing. And so then the third time I went in, he was like, hey, Caleb, this is Joe. I was like, oh, crap, what's up? And he's just like, yeah, I guess we look alike. And it happened a couple different times, I guess.
He calls me Caleb every once in a while.
Yeah, right. So I started talking to Joe, and I found out he's a photographer, and he's got this studio, and I saw a lot of his work. And I was like, I don't know. Photography can be one of those things where you always know someone who's a photographer, right? You're like, oh, yeah, I got a buddy who dabbles in it or whatever. He's got this cool package from Best Buy and he can shoot photos. And it's like, no, when I saw Joe's work, I was like, all right, this guy's the real deal. And I thought so highly of his work. I had him shoot my proposal with Gabby and I. And he like went all out, hid in some bushes, like just went total, like completely undercover for this thing. And he nailed it, man. So if any of you guys out there are looking for a photographer, if you just want to see some really, really cool work, I'm telling you now, Joe Sale is your guy. You can check him out at tampaimagefactory.com. He's local in the South Tampa area. You can go to him on Facebook, facebook.com/JSalePhotography or /Tampa Image Factory. Twitter at Tampa Image Factory, Instagram JSale Photography /Tampa Image Factory. Those are all the plugs you're going to get right there.
Wow.
Does not get any better than that.
We'll put it on the website post as well when this episode goes up Tuesday morning.
Reference that.
So to go to what Caleb was saying, every chick with an Instagram account thinks she's a photographer now.
We're all
or
photographers.
A model,
And we're a model. We're both.
Right.
I love when you look at the hot girl's profile on Instagram, and I bet this chick has 5 different job titles, and she does none of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like model, fashion consultant,
product ambassador.
Yep. That means you're an affiliate marketer, essentially. Getting in that nerd game that I'm in.
Liquor promo.
Photographer. And then it's like, I don't know, there's a 5th one somewhere in there, activist sometimes, which annoys me.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? I'll tell you my beef. I have a lot of people that come up, they find out I'm a comedian, and they find out, or actually now it's happening that they're finding out I'm a consultant. And either way, it'll be I'd say about half the people that I meet and tell them this, I'd say 50% of them probably do something condescending without even realizing it. So I'll give you the comedian one because I know that I've been having that one for 10 years where my best friends think it's really funny to tell people I'm a comedian and then leave the room, and then I have to I'm like, fuck you guys. Now I got to talk to these assholes at this barbecue that I don't even want to be at about comedy, and they don't know shit about it. Yeah. We're like, they'll be like, oh, you do funny skits. You should talk to Jerry. Jerry is fucking hilarious. When we play golf, that guy's the fucking funniest guy. Yeah. And he might be. Right. All right. So, but I'm like, he can't do the thing on stage. And I've never been the good guy at a party. I've never been that loud guy. Mm-hmm. That's a different animal. A lot of comedians are kind of introverted. For photographers, I feel like you probably get the same thing because what I'm dealing with the humor side is everybody has a good sense of humor. Yeah. And then but they really don't a lot of the time. And everybody probably thinks they have a good eye.
Very true. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying too, and I'm very introverted. So for me, photography is my outlet. That's how I express myself. Yeah. I don't really go out. I don't really interact that much unless it's for a networking event or a professional event.
Or full moon or something like that.
That too. So I understand too, like social media, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. It's almost a necessary evil to where I have to put some stuff out there so that I'm relevant and I kind of stay relevant. Mm-hmm. And same thing with the girls who do all the product placements and all the selfies and whatnot. So I understand it. It's kind of one of those things where if I didn't share my work, people would still probably know about me, but it's good to get it out there and open your base up to more people. But yeah, I mean, people, everybody's a photographer, everybody's a comedian, everybody's a model. You just kind of have to weed through and figure out who's good at what they do. And obviously that's who you are and that's who I am. And
yeah, but I mean, like, same with the consulting part. They go, oh, you're okay. And it's like, I'm like fucking, instead of, like, with stand-up, they go, tell me a joke. And I'm like, suck my dick. Like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. This church doesn't need that right now. No, but I'll be like, that it doesn't really work like that. I need to be on. It's like kind of a different. I'm going to tell you a joke. You're not going to really laugh because it's not a street joke. Right. It's not dun dun dun. It's something I want to. You got to be there and you got to be a little anxious with the crowd and kind of be in that noise. With the consulting side, I'm like, all right, let's try me. I know I'm young. I'm 31, and so people want to try me on that. Mm-hmm. I can see it a little bit, and so I go, try me. I'll do a strategy right here for you. Usually I get paid $186.50 an hour for. So let's do it. Just because I'm starting to get like a little man syndrome with it.
Like, they're like, hey, I heard you're consulting. It's like, try me, dude.
Do it.
Try me now.
I'll fuck you up. So.
So I don't mean to interject, but I feel with photography, the biggest thing, and we just had our last guest on Diamond View Studios on the last episode, and they do video.
Yeah, great guys.
Really, really cool crew. And they were kind of throwing out some stats, and whereas something like 86% of like content will be video by 2017 or 2018 or some big number like that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you're a photographer, it's almost probably exhausting playing like the social media game, because we all need social media if you're in business, and it's just kind of something you have to do to stay relevant and kind of to get out there. Yeah. But it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, man, like you can be so criticized to be like, all right, photographer, because there's so many untrained eyes, right? And it's everybody now that's looking at it who might not really understand good photography or understand good, I don't want to say artwork, because art can be kind
subjective.
Of subjective and based on different opinions. But do you ever feel any of that, like pressure with some of your social media and being like, I'm a photographer, this is a photography platform, I better be good? Do you ever feel that?
I do, and I generally don't post as often as some other photographers do, because when I first got started, another photographer in the area named Brian James, really talented fashion and kind of beauty photographer, he told me, he goes, Joe, only post your best stuff. Don't post anything else, because
sounds like pretty good advice.
If you post 5 pictures and the first one's really good and the other 4 are just everybody's going to remember the other 4. They're not going to remember that first picture that they saw that kind of blew them out of their shoes. So you really have to kind of take that to heart. And I see photographers post 8 or 9 pictures a day, and I'm like, really, the same sunset, just a different angle. Like, and sunset photography is easy. It's not something hard to do.
Finally, somebody came out and said it. Good Lord, dude.
So I
take that, motel rooms.
Exactly. So I take that advice to heart. Only post your best stuff, and that's kind of a problem for me, because there will be 4 or 5 days where I don't post anything photography wise, but I'll be happy to post other stuff, stuff that's going on in my life, and I like to kind of be open and upfront about that sort of stuff too. Yeah,
and you've got a really interesting kind of like story of how you you've got a really interesting story of how you fell into photography, or how photography kind of grabbed you, and the way you made it your job, and not just your job but your passion. You want to share that with everybody a little bit?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, it's a big part of who I am. It's why I'm at where I'm at today. I used to drink and party with the best of them. I used to go out and, Friday night would turn into Sunday morning really quick, and just make some really awful decisions, just do some really stupid shit, and not really sure how I only got arrested twice. But that second time that I got arrested, man, was really an eye-opener for me, sitting in jail and listening to the judge kind of say, I'm going to release you on your own reconnaissance, but you cannot be around alcohol for your entire, moving forward, you cannot be around alcohol.
What does that mean? Like,
that was a part of part of my probation, was you cannot be around alcohol.
Not for life, but
that's how I took it.
Yeah. Was your probation in Utah? Like, how do you it's super hard to not be around. Like, how do you I'm in my eye line right behind you is 2 bottles of Tito's, and I'm like,
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So, not if you want to come party in my office. No, but I'm saying, like, how do you avoid something that's almost omnipresent?
It is. It's everywhere. It was really difficult too, because most of the friends that I hung out with, they were really into that scene, and it took a lot. I mean, to make that change, you have to entirely change your life. Where you can't go out, you can't go to happy hours, you can't go to house parties or football parties, or you can if you're strong enough to make sure that you don't take that drink.
Yeah.
And for me, a part of my release was also that I had to go to AA a couple times a week. I had to go to group counseling and sessions where they would actually test. They would do pee test and swab test to test for alcohol on your breath. And thankfully that was kind of a regulator for me. But at the same time, I really didn't need it. I was that judge telling me that. I mean, it really just kind of resonated in my head. And alcohol's kind of been a factor in my family, alcoholism. So I kind of wanted to cut it off while I could, and I had the opportunity, and I knew I was going to have a lot of time on my hands and didn't really know what to do with it. So I figured, let me pick up that camera and see if I can turn that into something. And luckily, it's kind of led me where I am today. And drinking is no longer an issue in my life.
Yeah.
If I want to have a drink now, I can, but I don't. It's just one of those things where I know that nothing good can really come of it.
Right. It's I think you.
Well, yeah, I was just going to ask. So, was the photography aspect was that a part of you beforehand, or was it something that you just kind of attracted to in maybe some of the downtime you had to clear your head after all this had happened?
Well, I had like a crappy digital camera, and I'd had been in real estate in my previous life, so I'd used that digital camera and done some things both for real estate and then also just for my own. But I never really did anything with it.
So at one point you were the photographer that you now probably just grimace at.
Nobody ever knew. I mean, no, but I mean, people would say I had those were great pictures, but I would never really show them to anybody besides friends and family.
Right.
Yeah.
They always say great work anyway, so you never know how good you are until you show it to people who have no idea who you are.
Yeah.
So, but once I kind of made that decision, I went out and I think I traded an old antique clock that was given to me and my family, and I traded that for a Nikon like D3200, and that was the first DSLR that I worked with, and just kind of learned the settings and tried to learn the science and the art behind it, and just take it day by day. I mean, I would go out for sunsets when I felt like going to happy hour, and I would go out and photograph those and try to do unique, different things that nobody else was doing.
That's awesome.
It's one of those things where idle hands can make the devil's work kind of deal. Where you took that I wrote a bit actually about this. I found it the other day about I took a couple of weeks of just not drinking, and I might do it this April. I've been thinking about it, just because I'm like, it's been a while since I've had just a month of just not boozing,
Yeah.
And so just as almost like your own little cleanse or challenge or whatever you want to call it. And I wrote a bit in that last time I did it 3 years ago or something like that. I didn't drink for 3 weeks. And I remember writing a bit about oh, this shit's boring. I eat up a lot. Now I'm looking at it in a different perspective. Now I'm looking at it oh, I'm running a business. I might have extra hours in my life that I can go hang out with my wife or work ahead to be able to go hang out with my wife instead of coming home after 14-hour days every day and just bitching about what's going on.
Right. I mean, it all depends on what you want to do when you drink. I mean, some people want to go to bars, other people want to go to clubs or whatever it might be. I mean, if you can drink and not have it affect your life in a negative way, by all means. I mean, I'm not one to tell you not to, but there's a certain amount of clarity that kind of comes to you after 3 weeks or 4 weeks of not drinking.
Yeah.
And sitting alone on my couch watching Netflix or taking my dog for a walk, and instead of being around friends and family suddenly seems okay.
Right.
I didn't necessarily need to be in that scene, and you really find out who your real friends are, and you lose quite a bit of so-called friends, but it's all about what you make of it too.
Do you think that feels more like a positive thing though, when you kind of lose some of those people? Because you at this point you don't just see it, but you probably feel the bigger mission at hand, right? And when those people kind of stop calling you, and you just find yourself, like you said, man, I'm photographing a sunset instead of being at happy hour with Rick, and it turns out I don't have a lot of fun with Rick anyways, and it's kind of probably a burden lifted off, right?
I could still go to happy hour tomorrow and still run into those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not. It's not that they're not doing good things with their life. It's just the same shit over and over again, different weekend, different weeknight, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And for me, it just took a really long time to figure out. I mean, you said you're young, you're 31. It was 35 when that hit me.
Yeah.
So, for some people, drinking's not a problem, and they can have fun, they can do good things. But for me, it was an issue. I mean, it was a lot of stupid shit happened in my life because of it. So
Yeah.
Anything you can go into detail? Or
I mean, I was pulled over once driving home. You know, I was hanging out with a couple friends, and you know, we were drinking and doing some other things, and I was driving home, and you know, for the first time in my life, you know, I'd been driving intoxicated or drunk since I was 21. I mean, just it happens, and I never really got caught doing anything. But driving home around the airport, and the lanes, all the lane line just started coming together. I mean, I had no idea what was going on, and apparently I'd taken a like a pain pill of some sort,
yeah,
a really strong one,
Yeah.
on top of all the drinking, and I was pulled over, and the cop was like, I don't know what you're on. I don't really care. I'm getting off. So if you have somebody you can call in 3 minutes that can be here in less than 10, you're getting off.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
called my mom,
Holy
and
shit, dude.
yeah, but that was 2 years before I got my first DUI. I only have one DUI, but that was my first. That should have been a wake up call.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I played it off like, I was a little too much to drink, a little too much of this, too much of that, and you know, I didn't take it seriously. And for me, that should have been the wake up call.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, you know, growing up here, I know I can't say that I've never driven without having any kind of buzz, because that we kind of grew up in this area, the pre-Uber, no real taxis,
Right.
and it's not blaming it on that necessarily, but it is a factor where you're like, I'm probably okay after 4 or 5 drinks of like hanging out, and most people probably are, but there are instances where you can have that little to drink and have like something you didn't even realize could fuck you up that bad.
Yeah, but and even after having, you know, 3 or 4 drinks, for me and probably for a lot of people, you can't make an educated decision on what to do and what's right and what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can make judgment calls, but they're not necessarily good because your judgment's impaired.
Right.
So for me, it just went on way too long. You know, I'm thankful I never really hurt anybody. I'm thankful I never ended up in jail for a longer period of time than just 2 nights. You know,
Yeah.
one for the DUI and then one for the second arrest, which was in March of 2013, and you know, that was kind of the big wake up call for me.
So what we love about this podcast is really hearing a story like this,
Yeah.
and it basically, whether you're just young and you don't have a lot of options, or you're in that position and you go, I got to figure my life out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say the majority of our friends are kind of he's in his late 20s. Caleb's in his late 20s. I'm pointing. That's bad pod.
Bad pod.
My friends are in their, you know, early to mid 30s, and a lot of them still are like, I don't know what to do with my life kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, well, let's sit down and figure it out. And then sometimes it'll be like, well, I do want to do this, but how do I get started? So I want to hear how you went from like, hey, this is kind of maybe my rock bottom, to what like, there's always going to be some discipline factor in there. And I think that's the most interesting part. If you have any, like, for lack of a better term, life hacks,
Right.
I think it's it's kind of a mom term to
It
use,
is.
but how you're like, all right, time to regroup. What you did to kind of take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, I tried finding, you know, at the time that happened, I had run my own marketing company, and I'd been doing that for 4, almost 5 years over in downtown St. Pete. And when that happened, I was like, okay, how am I going to continue working? How am I going to find a job if I want to just start something that I can just figure out a career and go that route?
Mm-hmm.
I'd always been in sales and marketing, but never really had that consistent 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 job where you know what you're going to be doing for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So for me, trying to fill out an application online, submit your resume, you have to click that box, and then you have to explain it. I'm like, first of all, it's an online process. My resume is rarely going to get seen, but if you click that box, it's never going to get seen.
Yeah.
So I always think about that. Like, if you pee outside, make sure you're not near a school. Like, figure that, because that would be the worst way to be like a sexual criminal in your area.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to come against a really like just POS cop.
Hey, you get the opposite of the cop that pulled you over, and that I mean, I've heard it happens every now and again. So.
Well, it happened on my second arrest. So that they're out there, and they don't want to deal with bullshit, and they're looking for ways just to kind of, you know, do their job, but sometimes they get a hard on for it, and you know, you have to thank them for what they do. For me, I look at it as a blessing in disguise. I mean, Yeah, I got arrested for a $7 petty theft, and I had a felony possession of narcotics, which happened to be an empty bag of Molly, which I had been doing all day. So
you weren't messed up enough to eat the bag.
No, it was in my front shirt pocket, and
these are called the Trinidad James era. These are the Trinidad James years.
Yeah, so I'm just like, I thought I was so pissed off at first. I'm like, how do I get put in handcuffs over a $7 petty theft? Not, the cab driver not wanting to take a debit card. That's what kind of led to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Once I was in handcuffs, the cops started going through all my pockets.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to help myself out by saying, hey, look, there's something in my front shirt pocket you need to know about.
Yeah.
And, he pulls it out. He goes, oh, look what we have here, everybody. Just, being a dick. And, so that kind of just led to the full-on arrest. And, it was a bit of a mess, but at the same time, that's the catalyst that got me to where I am today.
Yeah.
I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, I probably would still be drinking and partying and doing stupid shit. And so.
Or in jail. I mean,
Yeah.
you could very well end up on the wrong side of those, like physically on the wrong side of those kind of opportunities that kind of lay themselves out, experiences and opportunities where it's like, all right. But I want to hear about like, all right, so you had your Trinidad James era. That's over with.
Yeah.
You're court ordered to go to AA meetings. They tell you don't have control.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you don't buy into that 100%. It's just easier for you to just abstain as much as possible, which I feel is harder. I think that's an easy way. I think maybe people who are more intelligent that are trying to kick booze,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an easy for dumber people. I think it's easy to just go, we don't do with this. I have no control over this. When you do, and I think it's harder mentally to know you have control and you're not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, they call it white knuckling, where you just kind of, you force your way through it. And, my dad had some issues with drinking, and I had taken him to AA classes, and, he was completely drunk walking in. So, like, I didn't have a very good, favorable outlook for AA in the first place going into it, but I had to be there. The group classes, the group counseling really was kind of an eye-opener, too. In a group of 15, 20 people, 90% of them were there for opiates and pills, and very few were there for drinking or for other drugs. So it was kind of the prescription pill problem is a whole different story. But the whole thing with AA is that you really just kind of have to give yourself up to at least being there and being receptive. And you hear these stories from other people, and it's just amazing what some people go through. And they're still here today to tell their stories and help other people.
Yeah.
And maybe through my photography and through my efforts of, just being open about these issues, maybe some other people will just kind of open their eyes and hearts to making those changes in their lives.
Yeah, and I mean, artistically, sometimes that kind of that low point, or some of that pain or whatever you're dealing with, it can really help your art in a sense. It's not conscious. You're not like, well, I'm going to cut myself so I can have better photography, but it does give you a different perspective, because maybe you would never go to see these portraits of people that are in real pain, and then you can maybe capture some of that. I don't know if I'm on the right course with that or not.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've seen things that most people haven't. Not a lot of people have spent 2 nights in jail and slept on a metal cot, which, in relation to a lot of these other stories I've heard, that's nothing. It pales in comparison to some of these other stories. But you have to be able to go through, trials and tribulations in life to really kind of understand, A, who you are, B, what you want to do with your life and how you want to do it, and see how that affects other people. I'm blessed that my parents still, love and care for me, and, I haven't, pissed them off to the point where they want nothing to do with me, and, I've got a great family, so... I'm sure I've pissed off quite a few people in my life because of the drinking, but that's just a side part that you have to learn to accept, and hopefully those people will be understanding of your life changes and learn to forgive you.
Yeah. I think the whole journey, and to see where you are now, and I really hope that people do go and visit your website and your social media, and they get to see some of your work that you've done. And I hope that the people listening to this will share it, so they can kind of get a better understanding of where you've came from and where you're at now is really an awesome place, and the work that you're doing. And if you can kind of go into a little bit of detail of so you find photography or photography finds you, however it happens, who cares, because it happened, and that's the important thing. But where did the drive come from to start something like Tampa Image Factory, and where did you really realize, man, I might be able to do something pretty cool here?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, everybody's a photographer, is the saying out there, and there's anybody with a digital camera can take pictures. It takes a photographer to actually create an image, and nice. I wanted to create an image, hence Tampa Image Factory, not only for myself, but I wanted to provide a place where I can call home. I can have my own photography studio, but then at the same time, I can have other photographers that I respect and that I think their work is great. I can have them come in. They can either rent space or they can just use the studio to create other images of their own. And so that's where Tampa Image Factory came into play. I found an awesome building where I can live upstairs and kind of oversee everything that goes on and just be hands-on with the studio, but then also take a step back and just let people use it and create and see what they come up with. And it's a really cool spot. We've got a lot of good gear. If I were still drinking, I would never have the money to accumulate that kind of stuff. It's amazing, $200-300 that I'd spend on a Friday night. Now that goes towards a new light or a new camera or a new lens.
Your shit's expensive, man.
Very.
I mean, so if one question I wanted to ask before I forget is if there is someone listening that does want to be a photographer, you talked about your first DSLR camera. Mm-hmm. That's really like a legit camera. Like there's a big separation between having, that old ass like
a point and shoot.
Yeah, the first era of like automatic zoom lens and stuff to the like the ones that are like Nikon, Canon, that are. I'm going to try to explain this for someone who doesn't know any of this stuff. Where you can switch out the lenses, it's got the body, everything's expensive, basically.
Yeah, where you can create and you can manipulate this camera settings to get the desired effect.
Right.
I mean, that's the crux of any camera is being able to control it for the lighting scenarios and everything else. But getting a DSLR, you don't have to go out and spend thousands on a new one. For me, I traded an old clock that I had for the first one. So find something that you don't need in your life and just either sell it and use that money to buy a camera. It doesn't have to be brand new. Get a used one, learn it. Watch tutorials, take classes, do whatever you need to do to kind of learn the ins and outs of photography. For me, I never took classes. I never did any of that. I just went out. I had the time. I went out with the idea that I need to go out and learn the art and the science behind it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can fully understand it and not have someone else teach it to me.
Yeah. It's kind of, so for me, I'm looking at Joe's website right now, and I just think it's really neat, man. Just the whole thing, and going through some of your kind of photos here. I remember right around the time we met, you were going to Italy.
Yeah.
And was that kind of one of your first like photo excursion kind of deals where you're like, man, I'm just going to set out and I'm going to do like a whole series here on.
That was my first trip to Europe.
That's cool.
And I went with a small group. It's called Travel Life. It's a local travel company, and they put on these tours where it's only 10 people. So it's a very intimate kind of experience where you're not bogged down with 20, 30 people in a group.
Yeah.
So I went with the sole intention of taking my camera and documenting that entire trip. We went to Florence, Rome, Sorrento, Positano, Amalfi Coast. I mean, just all these beautiful places. And, I went with the sole intention of just trying to capture it from my perspective, being the first time in Europe, but also as a first-time travel photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember that as well. And you came out with a series of this. What do we call it?
Well, I'm trying to put together a book. I've never done it before, so just like I've never been on a podcast. I mean, it's all new to me. So I'm trying to figure out how to do, how to lay it out, whether it's in different chapters for different cities. Really trying to figure out how to publish something, whether it be online or in print, and really just want to put together a book, Italy First Impressions. My first impressions of Italy.
Yeah, well, there's definitely some amazing shots, and for those of you listening, go to the website, check them out. It's under the the purchase original artwork tab, I think.
Artwork tab, you can see my work.
Yeah, and check some of that out. Definitely check out the shots from Italy, because some of these things, I mean, I'm definitely fascinated. I'm planning on going to Italy for the first time later this year, and Joe and I have kind of talked about that, some places to go and things to do, but it's really cool to kind of see some of these shots and hopefully what I'll be getting into a little bit. So little bit some vino.
But the part, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. The part where you go, all right, how am I going to teach myself? How did you go? Because I taught myself pretty much. I'd say 85% of what the nerd stuff I've learned, it was self-taught.
Yeah.
Now I had good people in my life that guided me. Hey, you need to go do this over here. You need to go watch this on like Udemy or lynda.org to code or stuff like that. I had good nautical beacons, but they weren't going to sit down with me a lot of the time and really sit down and show me. Or let's meet up and we'll do a lesson on how to do this. How'd you teach yourself lighting? I mean, lighting alone is I think really difficult. What separates you a lot from being a real photographer is understanding lighting.
Yeah, well, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Every time you think you have something mastered, there's something new that comes out, a different light diffuser or a different softbox or different lighting technique. So you're always learning. Same thing with consulting. There's always something new that you have to be kind of looking out for. But just when you think you have something down, it's something new. A new camera kind of comes out or a new sensor, and it's always a learning process. So for me, I'm thankful for that. I have that opportunity to kind of not get stale and kind of get caught up in my own ways and just get old and stale and always try to do something new.
Well, it's tough to be your own continuing educator. I was talking to my wife last night, and I was like, I think I'm going to do what I consult with doctors and lawyers is you need to take a half day out of your week somewhere in there. And I'm working a lot of Saturdays and Sundays as well and nights and crazy hours right now, but I'm not focusing on what we need to do internally necessarily well, and it's on a routine. So I was like, I need to just make Wednesday afternoon, just put it on, put it on the vacation, on vacation or whatever it is, responder for email and just say,
get out.
This is Wednesday afternoon. This is where I do internal accounts, accounting, payroll, continue education, continuous improvement stuff. Because no one's going to push you unless you push yourself.
That's right.
If you can get stagnant and just go, well, I'm at this level and we're doing all right. And then something else comes along and you got no value.
Very true. Same thing in the photo world. I mean, you have to be relevant. You have to continually kind of push yourself to be new, create images that people will remember. I mean, that's ideally what you want to do on every shoot. There's weeks where I have 3 or 4 shoots. There's weeks where I have 6 or 7, and there's weeks where I have 0. So the weeks that I don't really have a lot going on, I use that time to try to reflect on what it is that I'm doing. Try to reevaluate the equipment that I have, how I'm going to use it, what works best for me, and stuff that I don't need, I get rid of, or I sell it, and I try to help other people as well.
Well, and what's great, I've been pitching you to a lot of my clients, and it's great because I've worked with so many photographers that are just like too flaky and can't get the shit done and treat it like a business, like it should be.
Right.
And I've been sending emails, and the last one I think I just said was like, look, Joe's gonna be there on time. He's gonna get the photos quickly back to you. You can already see he's good by his body of work. And he's gonna take direction.
And I'm not creepy. I think that was in there.
The only male photographer that's not creepy.
Thanks. It means a lot. Yeah.
No, I mean like how many of those like I'm thinking of like the waif guys that are
everywhere.
Those guys still exist big time.
Very much so. Yeah, they're everywhere.
Let me take new photos of you. Yeah, like just a wafy kind of vegan-y kind of guy.
Well, it's part of the business too, where everybody is a photographer. Like I said it before, I'm thankful to work with great marketing minds like yourself because you understand the value of good photography. But there's companies out there that'll just look for the person that'll do it the cheapest. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's photographers out there that'll do it for next to nothing. A, because they don't have anything better to do,
right? And
B, because they're so desperate to kind of get some work done for themselves and make a name for themselves, but they're watering down the market, and the client's going to be unhappy with the results. They're not really going to have the content that they need to tell their story and what their company does and get that out to the world. So, it's every dollar's worth it. I don't really make a ton doing some of these projects, but at the same time, I understand why I'm there. If I don't have to make $1 on some of these photo shoots, by the time I pay editors and all my equipment and everything else, I may not make $1, but for me, the experience of working with somebody new, going through that process, still perfecting my craft, that's invaluable.
And good work will beget good work.
Exactly.
You never know. Like, you just did 2 shoots for 2 of my clients, and you never know. They could have other investments elsewhere. There could be other things that they need someone on retainer for. As long as you keep doing good work, it'll come back. And I'm noticing in the website development stuff that we're doing for a lot of companies, everybody's going to need their. We were talking about video off air before we started, but photographer, a good photographer and videographer, you're almost going to have that as a business going forward for your online collateral.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to not.
Right.
Why would you use stock photo if you could just really spend the effort and time to get someone out there and get that? Every website now I'm switching up my questionnaire in my tactical list, and I'm starting with 2 things. Do you have photography, and do you have the branding copy? Because those 2 things can delay us 3 months if we just don't start immediately, because a lot of them don't know their vision and how to put it out there. So that copy's tough, and I use my friend Beth Miller as a freelancer, and she's out in LA, but she'll massage that story. Or our friend Noel Munez, who you worked with the other day, who's good at they both have patience that I don't have. But then also photography. And I can go, all right, Joe will probably be on this. And if he's not, I'll have to find someone shittier. But it's the reliability too, and I like that I can be able to kick out work to you where it's just like, it may not even be the best, for the price for you. But again, you never know how that's going to kind of compound itself.
Yeah, and to be cliche, I mean, I see the big picture when it comes to that sort of stuff, and when I work with marketing minds and marketing consultants like yourself, I see that. I mean, I know that company you're working with is expecting content that they can tell a story with.
Yeah.
And nobody wants just to read. They want to see what it is that company is trying to say. And I take that to heart. I mean, I instead of just taking a headshot, I try to get a little emotion out of somebody, and sometimes it's more difficult than others. Trying to get some movement instead of just somebody just sitting still. Try to show some movement in the environment. So I try to find different creative ways to kind of tell a story, and you put that on a website or you put that on social media, it's going to get more attention than just, hey, here's our Happy Monday post,
right,
or whatever it might be, or Throwback Thursday. So there's so much out there that you need that image to go along with the story. Yeah,
and I think you kind of alluded to it earlier a little bit, and I don't know if maybe you just didn't quite get around to it or you didn't want to say it, but I'll say it. It's kind of, these people, if they just would go the extra mile, look a little bit further rather than just the cheapest photographer out there, they'd get what they want the first time. Because putting together, a website, if you use a company like TocoWorks, there's only so much any web developer can do. Your photos are going to help tell the story of your company, and they're going to go on your website. It is so important to have those good photos as a first impression. And
the trend is minimalist, a heavy image, and with overlay text to get people involved. And it's it's one of those things where it's like, all right, we need to evoke your brand somehow, but one thing we've been doing before set up, and I'm kicking myself for not doing it a while back with any photographers, videographers, is setting up a shot list. What do you need? Let's get this done. Really practical shit like that. And so that really helps, because it's like, all right, we know you want to say we're these 4 things as a company. How are we going to evoke that via photo? And even then, it's still. Yeah, I'm sure it's still
a challenge.
There needs to be alcohol for them to get loose on that, because everyone's really stiff.
Yeah, and it's difficult I hate being in front of a camera. I'd much rather be behind it.
So that's where this all comes from, then, huh?
Yeah. So I entirely understand. From being a subject's point of view, I don't like being in front of the camera. So I try to make it as easy as possible, as comfortable as possible. I'm not good at telling jokes, so if I want somebody to smile, I have to do something stupid or just kind of off the cuff. But I'll leave the comedy up to you. But
that's not. Yeah. I'll just try to be improv-y with it.
Improv-y, that's good.
Well, just be like, where are you from? Let's just keep asking questions.
Yeah. I like those candid things just to kind of come out, and then I'll just sit there with the remote shutter and click the shutter when they least expect it, and that's usually a really good shot. So.
Hey, people are usually really good about talking about themselves, and you just keep asking them questions like it's a first date, and they'll relax a lot of the time.
I'm good at that.
I had to produce a bunch of digital commercials, and you could tell everybody was being super stiff, and it's just like, all right, well, I got to go back to my groundlings classes and figure out how to loosen everybody up that's not used to doing this.
Yeah, it's not easy sometimes, and I've been on photo shoots where I'm there because someone else tried to do what I was there to do. So I've reshot several photo shoots, and I've only been doing photography professionally for 2 years. I've been doing photography for 3 years total, but to be asked to come back and do a reshoot and try to correct what somebody else did just kind of falls in line with what we're saying. I mean, like, you've got to charge a certain amount for your worth because what it is that you do is valuable. And I relish the opportunity to work with new clients, and I work hard to try to please them, whether it's through the photography or getting it done sooner than normal, and trying to deliver them as soon as possible. All that is taken into account, and I just do what I can to make people happy, and I feel like that's my mission in life, is just try to help people, whether it's on business side or the personal side of photography, and try to make things right.
Go ahead. So I want to ask kind of about the future of photography, in the sense that one of my really good friends growing up, he's a good friend now, Brian Thomas, he's a photographer, and he does a lot of freelance. He's you could say, some would say, at the top of like that kind of game, where he's, as a journalist, photojournalist, really. Sure. He'll get the call for the New York Times. Wow. The last time I was hanging out with him in New York, he was on his thing was on the front page on the Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, he got up at like 4, had to get out to like Governor's Island in New York and like get out there, and then it was on the front page.
Amazing.
He's doing his own stuff right now, a Florida series. But when him and I talk, I go, what is the next steps? What do you see as the future of this? Because he was explaining to me a few years back that he feels like it is limited. He feels like he is in this rarefied era as a photojournalist, and I'm like, I told him, like, there's got to be something out there. I don't know what it is, but it's always necessity breeds innovation kind of deal. And I know the freelancer world for photographers is fucking rough.
It's got to be. I mean, with the newspaper industry being the way that it is, granted, they still need the imagery for their online content and for their papers, but with all the cutbacks and everything in the newspaper industry, I mean, I haven't personally been in that industry, so I can't speak for it personally, but having opportunities, whether it's presented to you by your employer or by a company that says, hey, we want you to fly out, we want you to do these type of shots for us, having opportunities presented to you or making those opportunities happen is ultimately what's going to make you a better photographer. And fortunately, I've had a few presented to me, but I've also gone out and made a lot happen for myself. And I think that's kind of what sets aside some photographers from others. Other people are just willing just to kind of go out and take pictures and hope something happens. And for me, I'd rather go out, take pictures for a purpose, know why I'm taking it, whether it's for a company or for a client or for my own purposes or to create a piece of art. That's kind of, I always have a purpose in mind when I'm taking pictures.
I think Joe just completely answered my kind of not necessarily wrap up question, but kind of a question I like to start wrapping up with, and that's what you want people to know about Joe Sale, the photographer in Tampa Image Factory. And I'd ask that now, but I think that literally just summed it up perfectly.
Well, yeah, there's taking pictures and there's making images, and they're two different things. And I can go out and take pictures, but I really want every opportunity to lead to me making imagery, and to make that image last forever by either printing and framing it or having it used in a magazine or a piece of marketing collateral. All that sort of stuff drives me to keep doing what I do. I mean, I can open a magazine and be like, hey, that's my shot, that's awesome, like I see it to fruition, and then I obviously want to keep doing more of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna need you for my headshot. So I've got to get business ones and new comedian ones because I'm using ones from when I was 24. So the hair's receding a little bit more these days.
I was
So
about to say, they're like, where's Law?
I kind of have the Hulk Hogan hair.
We can always wear a hat.
Anything else? Anything you got?
No, I want to thank Joe for coming out, and it's one of those things. If good photography is hard to find, and I think that what Joe's got going on at Tampa Image Factory, people need to get on board with. At least go to the website, check them out, check out your social media, and just thanks for coming out, man. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it goes by fast, right?
It does, yeah. Very easy.
Yeah, if you have any questions you want us to throw on the podcast, you can hit up Caleb and I. Caleb at CALEB, not with a K, with a C, at TOCOWORKS.com, or Law at TocoWorks, LAW at TOCOWORKS. If you like this, why don't you go a little bit further, like Shawshank Redemption, meet me down in Mexico, pass this on to a friend, subscribe, rate, review, 5-star the shit out of this. But really, we do this for the love of the game, so pass this along, and mahalo.
Mahalo, brass.
Mahalo.